So I had a puppy class this morning that I want to talk about because what I saw was a lot of red flags. And these are things that if we're smart and if we know what we're looking at and if we're careful, we can prevent problems from occurring or at least from worsening, right? I arrive at the house. We're talking about a baby here. We're talking about a 9 or 10-week-old puppy. And the owner, it's the first time we're meeting. The owner greets me at the door, very friendly person, very kind of nice energy. And we shake hands, and he says, and he turns to the puppy who's down the corridor and says, and this is, and the puppy sees me, ducks, I'm out of here. And the owner says, oh, that's weird. First time he's done that. He's never done that. He loves people. And in my head, I'm going, bullshit. Not that the guy is lying to me, that he just doesn't have his lenses tuned to know what to pick up on. That maybe the dog has done that before, likely he has. And it might just be more subtle. It might not be as big. So I start explaining to him, I say, listen, this can absolutely be a one-time thing. But more likely than not, because I didn't do anything and I didn't make any loud sound and I didn't drop anything and there was nothing there to cause that in the puppy. So it's coming from the puppy. Now, could he have an off day? Could he have an upset tummy? Absolutely. But we need to talk about this because I'm fairly certain it's been going on for as long as he's had the dog without him knowing it. So, we start chatting, and it's a breed of dog that's really not known for being social. And I start explaining to him that the nature of the dog, any dog, has to be taken into account when we're training the dog. That goes towards the breed of the dog and just the individuality of the dog. So the DNA, and then who is this individual in front of us? And it's a chow chow. So they're not the friendliest dogs. They can be quite cat-like. And I have no problem with a standoffish dog. Not every dog needs to be in-your-face social. And then we start getting into all the other stuff. And this is what I really want to talk to you about today. Look at how we can take a little problem and make it really big. They're taking this puppy everywhere. The gentleman has a business, takes the dog to the business. The girlfriend's got a business, takes the dog to the business. Then they go out in public, and they're taking the dog out in public when they go. And I don't just mean out for a walk, because they live in the country, so they're not really seeing too many people. Outside, they're on their property. But if they go to a mall, if they go to a store, they bring the dog with. So number one, the dog is not truly used to being left alone, which is absolutely necessary. The dog has to be able to be left alone. The dog should feel good on his own. Number two, they're taking the dog into very stimulating, very overwhelming environments. Now, the dog is uneasy with one fairly passive person coming into the house. Imagine now a flood of people. And they're not dog trainers to pick up on the signs. And he's a chow. He looks like you just took him off a shelf of stuffed animals. He's got steel blue eyes or gray eyes. He's got fur that just looks like it's popping out. You know for a fact everybody's going to be getting in this dog's face. So the guy says, I take him into the mall, and he's not used to his leash and harness yet. So he freezes. But he's also freezing because he's uneasy with people. So we carry him around. And then people want to come up and pet him. So I say, yeah, it's okay because he's socializing his dog. I guarantee you the dog doesn't want it. And what is the net takeaway? I always talk about self-motivation, self-discovery. What is the dog learning in this instance? The world is scary. My people let all these invaders into my space. I give polite and subtle signs that I don't really want to have an interaction, but the people keep coming anyways. If you think that when he turns 6, 8, 14 months old, he's not going to be threatening, if not biting these people, you got another thing coming. The dog is figuring out that I don't like the world, and he's having a history built up in his mind that when I'm around people and I'm uneasy, I'm justified in being uneasy, because as polite as I am and as reluctant as I am, they force themselves on me. So the dog is learning to not trust his people because they're continuously putting him in this situation. And then the world is coming in, and people are, let's assume everybody's nice and dog lovers. And oh, he's scared, and oh, he's hiding behind, and oh, they think they're going to help the dog. Let me show him how much I love dogs. I showed the owner today when the dog, I put him on a leash and I kept him near me, and eventually he settled down. And I said to the owner, don't you see him disarming? Yeah, because I'm sitting on the floor. I'm not looking directly at him. I'm not touching him. So it's like we're sitting next to each other. We each have our own little table at Starbucks. I'm in my lane, you're in your lane. And I'm being mindful and respectful. And then if my bag, my jacket, my something comes into your personal space, I say, oh, sorry about that. And what I'm doing is I'm showing you that I'm not going to be a problem for you. We're going to, whatever time we're going to share next to each other, we're going to be okay. I'm not going to crowd you. I'm not going to invade your space. I'm not going to be weird. So the dog settled around me because he figured that out. And I said to the owner, I'm not here to convince you how much I love dogs by putting your dog out. Oh, let me show you how much and win him over. No, I'll win him over by showing him he can trust me. Okay, that's really what I want to do. So the dog got easy around me. But then all I had to do was shift my weight while I was sitting on the floor, and he was combustible again. If you don't think that's a red flag, you don't understand dog behavior. It's absolutely a red flag. I have little Walter on a place here. And maybe he's kind of in frame, maybe not. So every so often I just go over to let him know that he's doing a good job. So I'm showing the dog that I'm not going to mess with him. Every so often I might just do that to his fur, just to show him that it's a touch and nothing else. And then to see, does he want any contact? Will he initiate? True contact, true touching and affection and us connecting, that's going to be on his timeline, on his terms. It's his comfort zone that's fragile, not mine. I'm easy with him. He's not easy with me. So the owner is going out and socializing the dog, but they're doing it all wrong. And it's going to create problems. This kind of forced socialization where we think we have a dog, we have to get him out in the world. And yeah, we do, but there's a right way and a wrong way. Like anything else, you can do it and be constructive and helpful, or it can actually be net negative, meaning it can be harmful. Okay? So you have to be smart and you have to understand what is the approach for this dog. And what they were doing was all wrong. And then I said to him, you know, you take a dog like this out in the world and they are under the radar. They're not pushy. Like Hooligan, here, he's on my sweater. Hooligan was a pushy, obnoxious puppy. And I love that. That's a confident pup. That's a pup that says, I got to meet everybody. I got to be in everybody's business. I got to explore everything. It tells you the dog is confident. This little guy, they take him out and he stands between their feet or he stands on their leg, wants to be picked up. It's a lack of confidence. And then the owner picks up the dog, which really just further reinforces, yeah, you're right. This is a scary place and you're safe here. And then the people come in, and like I said, the dog is probably avoiding eye contact. The dog is probably using certain displays of body language designed to communicate, this is stressful for me, or I don't want this. And yet it's still happening. So they're easygoing under the radar dog. Absolutely, it's being done all wrong. If you have a dog that has a tiny comfort zone, that doesn't want people coming up to him, if you think you're going to change what he is by forcing it, you're going to compound it. And it's going to get worse, 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 worse. Hey, buddy. Good boy. You're such a good boy. You're such a good boy. So, then the last thing we talked about was when they take him to work, he's free at their place of business. And he's a pretty mellow dog. Like, he's really quite easy. If we eliminate this, he's a very kind of low maintenance dog. But now every time someone comes in to the business, the dog runs and hides. So what is going on with this dog? What is the pattern that's being developed, right? All behavior becomes pattern-based. All training is based on patterns, right? The dog learns from the first time to the 8th time to the 4,000th time that it's done something, and it becomes more and more firmly entrenched in the dog. So now they're taking the dog to the place of business. People come in, every time that occurs, the dog says, oh, stranger danger, have to run and hide. The takeaway for the dog is, as I run and hide, that's what saves me. And then the fear grows and grows and grows because the dog says, shit, every time someone comes in, I have to save myself and I'm responsible for my safety. And then the dog starts to get to a certain age where running isn't so palatable anymore. Now I'm going to make you run. And the other thing too is it's much more effective to scare away someone than to run away from the dog's point of view. Because when he was a puppy and he's avoiding eye contact, whether it's behind the owner's legs or in the owner's arms, he's learning already that avoidance doesn't always work because people still do come in, or at least they try to. So let's assume the puppy hides behind the counter at the place of business and the person just peers over and says, oh, he's so cute. The dog says, shit, they don't work so well this time. And then at some point, he's gonna, and the person's gonna back off. And then the dog says, that works so much better. So it's like 4 of us sitting at a table having a meal, and the dog goes to persons 1, 2, and 3, and no one pays attention to the dog and no one feeds the dog. And then the dog comes to me and I say, here you go, buddy. Here's a piece of meat. What do you think happens the next time? The dog will bypass the 3 losers that don't feed, that don't pay, and go to where it gets paid. The dog wants to get paid. So in this case, with survival, with safety, you better believe the dog wants to get paid. Therefore, the dog's going to draw from its experience of, I need to be aggressive, or I need to at least posture. And then it can be a slippery slope, or it can grow and grow and grow. So I gave them some strategies to deal with the puppy while he's in their place of business. And importantly, we also talk about he doesn't need to be there all the time. It's not necessarily a good thing. We have to understand that just because we want to do something with the dog doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for the dog. It depends on the dog, depends on the situation, it depends on where are we at with our dog in terms of the dog's age and the dog's training and maturity and ability to tolerate things and our ability to properly lead. Just because we own the business and no one can tell us otherwise, and just because you have the type of business where people really don't mind coming in and having a dog there, doesn't mean it's a good fit. So we have to take all this into consideration when we're socializing our dogs. And we have to understand that little red flags like what I saw today, and where I was told, oh yeah, he loves everybody, you're the first person. And then little by little while we're talking, I'm pulling out weeds from their stories and saying, yeah, but what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And it's not to do a, haha, gotcha, told you so. It's to open their eyes, because if we don't pick up on these things, and if these individuals continue their patterns with their dog over time, by the time he's 6 months, 8 months, a year old, it's going to be such a rich, deep belief in this dog that he's going to be so far gone that we can't reverse the damage. We can just mitigate what's going on. Right now, we have the opportunity to really, from the ground floor, build him up differently. Now, that doesn't mean that we can change who he is. He's a timid dog. He lacks a lot of confidence. He's not socially angled. He doesn't want to interact with the world. He doesn't have a big need. In fact, the owner told me that for the first few days, there was zero interaction between them, and the owner would just keep trying to hand feed. Okay, and that eventually won the dog over. Now, okay, a puppy can be scared, and it's a lot of transition for a puppy. The owner looks at it as, poor dog, just left his litter. It's a new home, new people, whatever. Yeah, I get all that, but there's a lot of dogs that do exactly that. Come home and they're like, yep, I'm home from day one, right? So this is really telling us who he is. So we cannot ignore who the dog is. Now, if you don't do this right, I have a 10-year-old dog coming in for training later this week. He's bit the family more times than they can count. He was abused, not by the owners, but by the previous owners. He really is a very anxious, very problematic dog, and he's had a bad history. He's had a bad history in the original situation where he suffered abuse, and a bad history with his owners behaviorally, not because they were bad to him, but just the patterns got deeper and deeper. At 10 years old, I don't get to just go and hit the reset button, right? It's not like a hard drive where you format it and you start over. It doesn't work like that. So we're going to improve things, and if he lives another 6 years, 8 years, whatever it might be, it's going to be better than it was. But if we can get to them when they're 8 and 9 weeks old, that's even better, of course, because he doesn't have a history. He has this much of a history. That's all it is. And then we can influence the dog. I'm not going to change the dog. This is not possible. I can't change the dog. Hooligan loves people. I've never seen anything like it. Never. Think your most social, crazy, social lab, golden, whatever. Not a hair on my dog's butt in terms of social. My dog was flirting with mannequins at the age of 9 and 10 weeks old. Mannequins in the window of the Gap with no arms and no head, and my dog is doing this in the window. So that should give you an idea. So I can't change that in him. And my training when we're out in the world and how I handle him and the experiences that I allow him to have are designed for him to not take that and become wildly explosive, because then it becomes problematic when we go out into the world. Now with this dog, it's the same thing, but in reverse. I don't want the dog to have bad experiences that will justify in his mind, aha, I was right. I was right. I knew I couldn't trust that person walking towards us. And I was polite and I looked away and I did everything to say, I don't want this. And the person still came and touched me, and eventually that dog's going to figure out snap and growl, right? You know the term self-fulfilling prophecy? Don't build that up for your dog. Don't teach the dog that he was right all along. Try to give him a different discovery, a different takeaway. So I was giving them some strategies to go out into environments like they were talking about, where they're doing things with the dog, and instead of the dog swimming with the sharks, meaning the people, we're here, the people are there, no one's interacting with him, we're interacting with the dog. And now it's like being in an aquarium where the sharks are. I'm not scared to be on the other side of the glass and the shark is on that side. It's really interesting for me. I get to observe a shark. But in this case with the dog, we're not so much focused on him purely observing. It's observing for the sake of, yes, this is all around us, but our story and our activity is all here. We're going to play, we have food, we have toys, we're going to sniff, we're going to explore, and we're going to have a great time. And they're there and we're here. And then eventually, if and when the dog wants to have an interaction, so be it. And if the dog isn't comfortable with interaction, then we're not going to force it. And over time, when history has shown the dog that coming out into these settings is non-threatening and he's a little fluffy wiggle, then maybe it's going to be time for us to explore getting him to interact, but making him think it was his want and his idea. And there's ways to do that. And the dog will show us how far we can go with this. But at least let's not validate his preconceived notion of the world is scary, people are scary, I need to be preoccupied with survival. That's very dangerous. And when you go out and you force socialization in this haphazard, ad hoc, just kind of crazy way, because we think we're always supposed to socialize and everyone's supposed to interact with our dog, you're going to compound the dog's belief that the world is scary if we're talking about a dog like this. So I wanted to share that with you all, and I'll keep you updated on how this puppy is doing, and also the owners if they're good listeners, because I think they absorbed what we talked about today, and when I see them next week and I get some feedback, I'll have a better understanding. So I'll talk to you soon about this one.